For almost 20 years, we've seen three actors playing the live-action version of the world's most famous superhero, Spider-Man. Among the three actors, two of them stand out as the final version of Marvel's webbed hero. Some see Tobey Maguire as the true comic version of a nerdy young man who is bitten by a radioactive spider. In the meantime, others see Tom Holland as a modern but closer to the initial concept of what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko had in mind back in 1962. Hey there, cinephiles! Here to look for the next best movies to watch? Or to know amazing things about your favorite movies? Well, then you're in the right place. Welcome to POPZEE, where you can find all the cinematic details you need. Today we have our picks for Toby Maguire versus Tom Holland as Spider-Man. But before that, make sure to drop a like. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and turn on post notifications. Make sure to stay till the end to know our take on your favorite movies. Toby Maguire. It's always helpful to be the first. When movie fans think of Spider-Man, they always recall Toby Maguire's trend-setting role as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, particularly when he's swinging from web to web across New York City. Considering how the actor's biggest break was, Maguire certainly made the most of his star-making role. Toby Maguire holds Peter Parker's sensitive and the typical macho heroic character of this personification. Truly, this interpretation of the character is perhaps the least like the original comic book character when it comes to his looks and superheroics, since this more muscle-bound version feels like it often praises the superhero conventions of pre-established heroes like Superman and Spidey. Maguire really helps us sell the sly earnestness of this version, to let us know that behind his red suit is a gentle, loving, deeply caring boy who cares for people. Sometimes, that almost too earnest representation makes people think that Toby Maguire is a little too much of a Boy Scout, and there's something to say about that. However, Maguire's work can also be underestimated when it comes to introducing this pivotal comic book character to the masses, Tom Holland. Tom Holland's performance is that he captures a plucky, boyish spirit that was mostly lacking from the other Spider-Man movies. The character is intended to have a looser, more flexible structure, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe allowing Tom Holland's Peter Parker to play supporting roles in other movies, such as Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, in addition to his own two films, Spider-Man Homecoming and most recently, Spider-Man Far From Home. With 5 films under his belt, Tom Holland has played the part the most. Tom Holland will be the actor to perform the next few years, at least until Marvel decides to recast the part. And when you see an actor playing that role many times, novelties and charisma will start to wear thin, sadly. Luckily, we're not quite there yet with Tom Holland, but we've seen the actor play this role 5 times in a 4-year stretch. That's a lot of it. And this makes us wonder if this version of the character is going to be stretched a bit too thin for his own good, especially because, as seen in the amusing yet lighter standalone movies, the character arc seems less concise and more widespread. High school. It's still weird to see obviously 25 or 30-year-old actors struggling to get away as characters about half their young age. High school features are stripped away at the halfway point where the characters graduate, but there was a desire to see high school Spider-Man prosper, and there was something that was ultimately lacking in the otherwise often satisfying movies. High school plays such a teeny small portion of the original Spider-Man trilogy that it'll be incredibly difficult to argue that the high school elements are where the movie excels.
It's freaking weird.
Did you see that?
Parker?
As much as Sam Raimi was right with his films, there is a critical place where his films ultimately fall short. And it would be much more clear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe how little these films portray high school. When it was time to recreate another Spider-Man, it was clear that one of the few ways to make it affectionate to the audience after loads of other Spidey movies was to truly lean into high school, and to make Spider-Man more young, buoyant, and the charming side come to life in a more massive way for film fans. Therefore, one of Tom Holland's most rewarding elements is that it finally makes Spider-Man feel like a real high school student. There is no denying, therefore, that Tom Holland is completely the best high school student between the two. He captures the unpredictable, exuberant enthusiasm of a young character with a boyish mentality that makes it even more realistic for him to be in high school, even though Holland is now in his early 20s. As every high school student knows, and probably every former high school senior remembers, it's never easy to balance your school life, your personal life, and your other extracurricular activities. Imagine being Spider-Man 2 when all this is happening. It takes a driven young kid to make it all happen.
Mass cancels out, so it's just gravity times sine.
Right. See, Flash, being the fastest isn't always the best if you are wrong.
This Peter Parker is more unsure and uncertain about how to perform his responsibilities. He's much clumsier and insecure as a hero, and it's clear that he considers himself much more duty-bound to stand by as he becomes an Avenger.
You're an Avenger now.
Action hero. Tobey Maguire is the more conventional action hero of the three Spider-Man, mostly relying on punches and kicks. His type of action may be more basic than what was done in the following reboots, but thanks to the beautiful buoyancy of the style produced by director Sam Raimi, there's a lot of pulp and excitement generated by these particularly exciting action beats. Often, when we look back at the fan-favorite Spider-Man fight sequences, it's still amazing to see the very cool scene with Spider-Man, Aunt May, and Doc Ock in the middle of Spider-Man 2. It's rousing, it's suspenseful, it's thrilling, and it's said easily. It catches the character's style and sensationalism, but that's not to ignore the train sequence of this movie, or the scene where Spider-Man must somehow rescue both Mary Jane and a fleet of strangers at the same time, or even the Sandman fight in Spider-Man 3.
I guess you haven't heard. I'm the sheriff around these parts.
Okay.
This trilogy has the most unforgettable fighting sequences, and if even they're relying on a lot of punches and kicks, Sam Raimi is tremendous at making these scenes stand out. Most importantly, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is also trying to get his bearings. He's like a teenager struggling to learn how to drive.
Mr. Stark, it smells like a new car in here.
He needs a lot of trial and error, and he's not at the height of his powers in his combat scenes. Moreover, it was only in Tom's fifth film that Spidey learned to hone his spider sense. That helps make this version of Spider-Man more relatable, of course, but it doesn't make it a great action hero. Not yet, at least. Similar to Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland is allowed to be stealthy compared to Tobey Maguire. Seeing him develop at a more gradual yet skillful pace makes some of the action scenes more satisfying, because we all know the hard work that went into a great punch. More than that, Holland's smaller size and dexterity in the role tends to give him a select edge in certain bouts of action, holding the character to twirl and contort in a number of different ways.
You have a knack for getting in trouble.
You have a knack for saving my life.
Romance. The beauty of Tobey Maguire's chemistry with Mary Jane Watson. It's a very simple, relaxed relationship that doesn't involve too many twists or surprises, so it's what you expect from two on-screen couples. It's sly, windy, heartfelt, and incredibly passionate, if it's a goody two-shoes type of way. It's definitely the most stable relationship we've seen in a Spider-Man movie. There's something really lovely and old-fashioned about how the relationship plays out in the film, particularly with Peter Parker eventually breaking up with Mary Jane, getting back together, and learning to find the courage to propose to her love. While it doesn't have the same tones and touches of realism that were found in both Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, Tom Holland and Zendaya, it has a gentle, warm heart that makes it sound genuinely invigorated in the right moments of burning, and Sam Raimi's beaming flashes of style and excitement enliven this relationship as well. At his root, Peter Parker is a bleeding heart lover, and a couple of his best tragedies have come from the raging fire or the painful loss of his girlfriend. Spider-Man reveals a fierce side to his enemies, but one of the reasons fans admire is that he's a major softie in his heart, and his more sentimental scenes have come from his romances. Similarly, one thing that impresses viewers with Tom Holland's latest interpretation of Peter Parker is how down-to-earth his relationships are. There's still something really sweet about the lovely romance between MJ and Peter Parker. This version of MJ is particularly strange, more isolated, and very much sarcastic. Whether or not these characteristics try to mask her underlying teenage insecurities, it's obvious that this version of the character is more independent and less romantic than the previous Mary Jane, and that makes it difficult for Peter Parker to win over her affections, even though they are comfortable with each other. Like Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, Zendaya and Tom Holland were rumored to have been dating at one point, which may be why their dynamic relationship influences their performances, especially in this latest film. That's it for today, guys. Hope you liked the video and let us know who your all-time favorite Spider-Man is in the comments section. Don't forget to turn on the bell icon for more updates, and follow us on social media at POPZEE. See you soon!